Chapter 2671. Morrison smiled widely. Madam Sadusky, you know that he didn't stand you up on purpose. He really wanted to borrow the wedding gown from you. Kara looked up and adjusted her glasses. He can come and get it. Why are you here? I did it for him. He will only be able to come and see you after half a month, and then it will be the wedding. If you can't lend it, he won't be able to explain it to his wife. Morrison sighed. He almost lost his life because of this wedding dress. Do you think that's my fault? No, I wouldn't. Morrison walked to her. Madam Sadusky, why don't you lend it to him? He really wants to borrow it. Even if it's just for half a day. Kara arranged the dried flowers, placed them in the vase, and walked to the cupboard with the bottle. I'll see him the day before his wedding. Morrison didn't know if this meant she agreed to it. He explained to Waylon, who smiled. Thank you anyway. Thank me. She didn't say if she would lend it. Waylon placed down his magazine. What she meant was she would deliver it herself. What do you think she meant by seeing me the day before the wedding? Morrison was surprised. That meant she agreed. He smiled and leaned back into his bed. You made it sound like I'm in a terrible state, so I guess she's feeling sorry for me. Damon and Colton came back. Jamie was already locked up and was thought to be the main suspect in a manslaughter case. All his appeals were rejected. Waylon rested for a week until he got a new SIM card. He found Cameron's number and dialed it. Cameron was awakened by her phone and picked it up without checking who it was. Hello, it's me, Cam. Hearing that voice, Cameron immediately sat up. Wayne, Waylon gently said, I'm sorry for calling you back after so long and making you worry. Cameron bit her lips. You knew that I was worried. Wayne, are you alright? He smiled. Yes, I'm almost fully recovered. Wayne, she lay back in bed and stared at the ceiling. The room feels so empty without you around. Even my food doesn't taste as good. I even dreamed of you. Am I sick? I'm very sick. After a long silence, there was a chuckle. You're terribly sick, just like me. Lovesick. Cameron chuckled. I guess there's no cure for that. He smiled. I've never thought of getting better. Cam, I'll be back soon. She replied. All right. He waited for Cameron to hang up. After she did, she turned around and smiled and hugged her blanket. Hearing his voice was good enough. Meanwhile, Colton went to visit Waylon and saw that he was recovering well and was already out of bed. He was happy. Are you completely all right now? Waylon, who was standing on the balcony, turned around and smiled. Yes, I'll be discharged after a week. Colton walked over and stood next to him. If anything happened to you, that man wouldn't even be able to make things right even if he lost his life. Waylon looked at him. Thanks to you and Dad. Colton looked at him. We're a family, brothers. There's no need to be so courteous. After hearing that, Waylon chuckled and placed his hand on his shoulder. Sure. By the way, where's Dad? Chapter 2672. Dad went to the De Armas. Meanwhile, at the De Arma mansion, Nolan and Lewis were chatting in the living room. When Lewis found out about Waylon's accident, he asked, how is he? After a week of resting, he's almost fully recovered. He'll be discharged next week. Lewis picked up his teacup. Next week, but I heard that his wedding was on the 9th. Nolan raised his brows. What can we do? We delayed it to the middle of the month. Valentine's Day is a good day for a wedding too, right? Lewis paused, then chuckled and slowly sipped the tea. That's true. February 14th is a good day. Who's having a wedding on Valentine's Day? Wayne. Riley walked in with some pastries. Lewis smiled. Who else other than your godson? That's nice. She placed the dishes on the table. We're going back during that time. We can't miss his wedding. 1 week later, Waylon returned to Bassburg with Colton after getting discharged from the hospital. Cameron, Maisie, and Freya were all at the airport, waiting for them. When Cameron saw him, she ran over and hugged him. He hugged her back. I'm back. Cameron buried her face in his shoulder and chuckled. I know. Nolan looked at Maisie. I didn't break my promise. Both our sons are back safe. Maisie smiled and adjusted his coat. Yes, thank you. After that, she looked over to the others. Let's go home. Waylon held Cameron's hand and led her to the car, followed by Freya and Colton. Nicholas was already waiting at home for them. When they were back, he smiled and said, "You're all home." Nolan walked over with Maisie. "Aren't you at our old mansion? You told me that Wayne was in an accident, so I came back." He then looked at Waylon. "I'm glad you're fine. I was really worried." Waylon looked down. "I'm sorry for making everyone worry." Nicholas smiled at them. "All right, let's go in." They were all finally together. At the dining table, Nicholas looked at them and was overcome by emotions. Time flies. Coleman has a daughter now, and Wayne is getting married. Our family would be complete if Daisy was here too. Nolan spoke. "Don't worry, Daisy will definitely attend the wedding." Nicholas smiled. "Your mom would be happy if she could see this." Maisie and Nolan looked at each other and smiled. She picked up the wine glass. "To Wayne's health and safe return." Everyone raised their glasses too. The living room was filled with chatter and laughter. The day before the wedding planners arrived early to start decorating the place. The wedding was held in the crystal ballroom of a world-renowned hotel. Since the layout of the area was relatively large, it took the staff a day to decorate it. Waylon brought Cameron over to see the place. She was shocked when she walked in. The ceiling was decorated like the starry night sky with twinkling stars. There was an ice sculpture castle, a crystal carriage, and Edelweiss ice sculptures that were all luxurious and dreamy, like a secret land of ice and snow in fairy tales. She walked under the starry sky, then turned to look at Waylon. "This is absolutely breathtaking." Waylon walked toward her. "Do you like it?" Chapter 2673. "I love it. I feel like I'm standing under the night sky as if I can touch it if I raise my hands." She raised her hand, trying to touch them. She remembered something and turned around. This must have cost a fortune. Waylon walked next to her and stopped. "It doesn't matter as long as it makes you happy. We only have one wedding. My dad will say that I'm wasting money if he finds out." Waylon smiled and pulled her into his arms. "If he finds out that I spent money to borrow a wedding dress, will he probably pass out?" Cameron had nothing to say. Waylon touched her hair. "We only get married once in our lives. I don't want to leave anything out." The wedding design director walked over and asked, "Are you happy with the decor?" Waylon looked at Cameron. "Thank you. My wife is very happy about it." The design director said, "It's nothing. We're doing what we're supposed to. We want every newlywed couple to enjoy the best effects. Your happiness is the best appreciation we can get." Cameron asked, "You must have spent a lot of time on the night sky, haven't you?" The director smiled. "We did, but we're happy that you're happy." After she walked away, Waylon got a call from Hera. He turned and said to Cameron, "Let's go see your wedding dress." Hera checked into the hotel. When Waylon and Cameron arrived, Morrison met them and brought them to the guest area. Waylon saw Hera, walked over, and gave her a hug. "I'm glad you came." Hera smiled. "You almost lost your life for this, so I had to deliver it myself. I need to see which woman is lucky enough to have your heart." After that, Hera looked at Cameron. Waylon put his arm around her shoulder and introduced them. "This is my wife, Cameron Southern." Cameron greeted her. Hera nodded. "She's a beautiful woman." Hera walked over and gave her a good look. "I was worried that we might need to alter the dress, but now I don't have to worry anymore. Her height fits well." She then asked Morrison to bring the dress over. Morrison carried a big rectangle box over, and it looked heavy. Hera asked him to open the box. A beautifully preserved white wedding dress was inside. It was considered an antique because it was timeless, and the cutting and fabric captured that era well. Antique wedding dresses were mostly made of natural materials, such as silk, silk satin, handmade lace, and cotton. These were what made a wedding dress an antique wedding dress. In particular, it managed to be preserved to the present time, intact as before, which was even rarer. Hera tied her hair up with a hair tie and looked at Cameron. "Try it on." Cameron was surprised. "Can I try it?" "Of course. Let's try on the upper body." Hera walked into the changing room with the wedding dress, and Cameron followed. In the changing room, Cameron changed into the antique wedding dress with the help of Hera. Cameron didn't dare move too much during the whole process because it was an antique. Hera fastened the zipper for her. I didn't expect it to fit quite well. Chapter 2674. Cameron looked down at the dress. It's unbelievable. Take a look. Cameron walked to the mirror and saw herself in it. She looked as if she was from that era. She looked beautiful and elegant but still fit into the romantic fashion of the era. Hera walked out of the changing room and said to Waylon, "Take a look at your bride." Cameron turned around and was a little abashed when she saw Waylon outside. Waylon looked at her and smiled. "You really are breathtaking." All the newspapers in Bassburg were talking about the wedding of Wayne Goldman, and since the wedding was open to the public, the media were allowed to attend it. Daisy was heavily pregnant when she walked into the ballroom with Nalles. The reporters were there to interview them. They asked when she would be returning to acting, and she smiled and said, "I'm not in a hurry." After 2 years, when she was asked if she was worried about losing her place in the industry, she smiled and joked, "My sister-in-law is a great screenwriter. Why would I be worried that I won't be able to get a role?" There were a lot of guests there. Other than the Goldmans, the Butchers, the Lucases, the Pruitts from Octavia, and the Southerns were there too. When Sonny and Damien walked over with their entourage, Daisy greeted them. "Mr. Southern. Oh, isn't this Daisy?" Sonny smiled. "I haven't seen you in a while, and you're almost a mother now." "Good job, Knowles." Nalles smiled too. "You're going to be a grandfather soon too." Sonny couldn't stop smiling. "Yes, I am." Nolan and Maisie walked over. Sonny walked forward and shook hands with them. "Nolan, right, this is the first time we're meeting." "That's right. You took good care of Wayne and Daisy at the East Islands, and I've always wanted to thank you for that." "Oh, stop. The first time I saw Wayne, I already knew that he would be my son-in-law. Of course I would take care of him." Nolan brought him and Damien to the VIP seats. When Sonny bumped into Nick there, he was surprised. "Nick." He got up and bowed. "Sir, you're here too." Sonny patted his shoulder. "I haven't seen you in years. Didn't expect to see you here." Nick smiled. Sonny tugged his arm. "Come, sit with me. I have much to talk to you about." Daisy and Nalles took their seats. Riley and Barbara both asked, "When are you due, Daisy?" Daisy rubbed her belly. "Between the end of May or mid-June." "That's great. I guess you're like your mother." "Triplets." Barbara smiled. "I bet they're twins." Riley took her bet. "Sure, I bet that they're triplets. If I win, you'll pay me." "If you win, I'll pay you." Barbara asked, "How much?" $200. "Deal." Daisy smiled awkwardly. She wanted to tell them the truth but didn't want to spoil it. She leaned in close to Nalles. "Is it terrible if I let my godmother lose?" Nalles touched her hair. "Don't worry. My uncle has the money." Daisy laughed. Soon after that, Yorick and Zyla showed up. Colton and Freya took their seats with them. "Coleman, when will your wedding with Freya be held?" Everyone looked toward them. Colton said, "June." Daisy was shocked. "If I give birth then, I will miss it." Chapter 2675. Colton clicked his tongue. "I want you to miss it." Daisy wasn't happy about it. Nalles chimed in. "Don't worry, we'll just kick him out of our wedding." Colton chuckled. "Do you think you can?" Nalles smiled. "It's not the first day you met me." Freya was tired. "Are you kids?" These two just had a problem with each other. Everyone else was laughing. The wedding was about to begin when the lights dimmed. The night sky lit up. The master of the ceremony walked out on stage and excitedly said a few words of congratulations. Next, the bride and groom were going to enter. The crowd turned back to look and saw Mahina, the maid of honor, raising the veil with Morrison, the best man. Cameron walked out, holding Waylon's hand. She had a bouquet in one hand and was holding Waylon with the other while they slowly walked in. People started whispering, "That dress looks so familiar. Did the Princess of Stoslo wear this during her wedding?" He really spared no expense to get the dress. The dress and the venue probably cost millions. The two got to the Master of Ceremony, and the lights shone brightly around them. The Master of Ceremony hosted the ceremony, the vows, the exchange of rings, and finally, the kissing of the bride. Cameron grabbed Wallen's collar and kissed him, tossing the bouquet away. Everyone cheered. The master of ceremony froze, then chuckled. I guess the bride is taking over tonight. Waylon looked down at her and smiled. I'm happy with that. Daisy leaned on Nalace's shoulder while Freya held Colton's hand under the table. It was lively and warm. The dinner ended late into the night. The guests all stayed at the hotel, which was paid for by the Goldmans. After changing out of her dress, Cameron walked over to the ballroom with Mahina's help. Dad, Sonny, who was having a chat in the corridor, whipped his head area. Yes, my dear daughter. She smiled. Did you have too many glasses? That's not possible. I have a good tolerance. Your Uncle Damien, however, is drunk. Cameron grabbed his arm. Stay here for a few more days. Nicholas smiled. She's right. You should stay a few more days. Now that you've spoken, I guess I'll stay a few more days. Sonny and Nicholas left. Mahina looked at Cameron and smiled. He looked overjoyed. By the way, have the people from the Martial Arts Center left? Mahina nodded. Yes, Conroy was drunk because of them and was almost carried out. Nick had quite a lot to drink too. After that, she saw someone. Your husband is coming over. I'm going to leave. Cameron nodded. Be careful. Waylon walked over and hugged Cameron from behind. She turned her head and could smell the stench of alcohol. Did you drink too much? He smiled. No. She let go of her dress. My feet are tired. Waylon picked her up. You're getting heavier. She hugged him by the neck. It's your son's fault. He smiled. Yes, all his fault. We can't have our wedding night tonight because of him. Cameron's face burned, and she punched him. You're a perv. Chapter 2676. The news of Waylon and Cameron's wedding had been widely discussed on the internet. In addition to the beautiful and spectacular scene, a lot of them were also talking about Madame Hera's vintage wedding dress. The vintage wedding dresses that the masses had overlooked were starting to get more attention thanks to their wedding. A lot of the netizens also showed their grandmother's wedding dresses that they wore when they were young. The first appearance of Daisy in front of the media after her pregnancy also hit the headlines. Many netizens thought she would retire from the entertainment industry since she was the princess, right? Now, however, after watching Daisy's interview, all of her fans settled down and expressed their respect for her decision. No matter if she chose to retire from the entertainment industry or not, they would still be her fans. The Fog hit #1 in the ratings after it was released for some time. Shannon and his partners invited several of the lead actors to dinner. Daisy arrived at the restaurant at 1 p.m. with Nalace. Shannon and the rest came out to welcome them. It has been a long time, Daisy. I thought you were not coming. She smiled and said, you sent me the invitation personally, so of course, I had to come. Shannon smiled. I'm really flattered. Then, Nalace and Daisy stepped into the private room. After she took her seat, she began to greet the rest. Initially, they all were worried that they would feel distanced from Daisy, but it was only now that they realized they were wrong. She was still the same Daisy as she was before. Shannon took a look at his watch and asked, oh yeah, where is James? Someone replied, he just received the invitation from Mr. Winslow to take part in his movie, right? I guess he's pretty busy right now. Shannon said something to the waiter and continued. Let's wait for a while. Since he said he would come, I'm sure he'll show up later. Soon, James arrived with a bottle of red wine in his hands. When he saw Daisy and Nalace, he was slightly stunned. You guys are here too. He had been under the impression Daisy would not come anymore. Daisy chuckled and said, of course, I had to come. I'm part of the crew for the Fog too. Shannon felt proud and grinned from ear to ear when he heard what Daisy said. If I had known you would come, I wouldn't have brought only wine. It's kind of weird for the rest of us to drink when there is a pregnant woman here. James sighed after he took his seat. A staff member took over his bottle of wine with a smile on his face and said, you're right. We shouldn't let a pregnant woman drink wine. Let's drink with Mr. Fallon. James said, well, it seems like you're going to get really drunk today, Mr. Fallon. Shannon ordered the waiter to serve the food. Since they had known each other for a long time, they were less formal and more casual. The staff clinked glasses with knowledge after Shannon told them he was the series investor. James went closer to Daisy and said, "Seems like you're big with a child. Should I reserve one first?" "Reserve what?" "Your baby, of course. If it's a boy, I'll marry my daughter to your son after I have one. If it's a girl, I'll tell my son to marry your daughter and become the husband of the princess." The corner of Daisy's lips twitched. She was rendered speechless. Knowles put the wine glass down and turned to look at James. "What are you thinking about? We're friends for so long, Knowles. If our children can marry each other, we'll become a family. Don't you think that's nice?" Knowles smiled. "Do you think I'll give your future son a chance to get close to my daughter?" James took a deep breath and said, "I see. Not only are you super possessive of your wife, but you only want daughters as well. Then I hope all your babies are boys. There's no way you'll get girls." Chapter 2677. Knowles was rendered speechless. Daisy stomped on James's feet and said, "You're still as talkative as always." It was almost evening when they finished eating. Daisy and Knowles walked Shannon and the rest to the door. Shannon enjoyed the gathering immensely. He turned to Daisy and said, "Although people always say that there will be no market for actresses after giving birth and that younger actresses will replace them, I don't think so. For me, good actors or actresses have nothing to do with age. Daisy, you don't have to worry too much. Get as much rest as possible. If I come across a good script or see any role that's suitable for you in the future, I'll let you know." Daisy smiled and nodded. "Don't worry, I'm sure we'll have the chance to work together again in the future." After Shannon and the rest had left, Daisy turned around to look at Knowles. "I don't know why, but I feel that I'm pretty lucky. The entertainment industry was a place where fame and wealth were above everything. However, despite that, she was still able to meet with people like Shannon and Charlie, who did not get close to her because of her family background. Not only that, but she also had a bunch of fans who cared a lot for her and a few friends who treated her sincerely." Knowles raised his arm to rub her hair and said, "Well, that's because you deserve that." 2 days later, Daisy and Leah were walking in the park near Taylorton. Fresh shoots were sprouting from the grass, and there was a forest of blossoming flowers. Daisy looked at her and asked, "Leah, are you really planning to go abroad?" Leah nodded. "Yeah, I'm just waiting for confirmation." "Then what about Zephyr? I have not been in contact with him for a long time." "But it doesn't matter. Time will heal everything." Leah stopped in her tracks and turned around to look at Daisy. "Honestly, I was the one who had a crush on him, and I never told anyone." Daisy asked, "But why didn't you fight for it if you liked him so much that time?" She shrugged. "I knew that he didn't like me, so I didn't think it'd change anything even if I confessed to him. Besides, I think I only liked him because of his perseverance. I thought he was amorous and dedicated, but of course, that was just my definition of him. I never really got to know him. When I wanted to understand, I found that he was not what I thought. I felt disappointed, but now that I think about it again, maybe I'm just asking too much. He has the right to like other people, but I was selfishly trying to make him the way he was before." Leah couldn't distinguish whether she liked Zephyr as a person or she liked him because of his perseverance. Perhaps everyone would automatically look at the person they had a crush on through rose-colored glasses. However, when she took off the glasses and realized that Zephyr was not as gentle and devoted as she thought he was, she began to doubt herself. In the end, the person she had a crush on was the old Zephyr. Daisy grabbed her hand and said, "Leah, I'm sure you'll meet your true love one day." Leah was stunned for a moment, and then she smiled. "Thank you, Daisy. I think the same way too." At the same time, Zephyr brought Roxy to a coffee shop. Zephyr had been giving her the cold shoulder lately. She was delighted when he asked her out, so she put on her makeup and came to meet him. She sat in front of him and said, "I thought you had already forgotten about me, Zeph." Zephyr put a card on the table and moved it toward her. When Roxy saw the card, she was stunned. "What do you mean by this, Zeph? There are $250,000 in this card. This card doesn't have a password. I'm breaking up with you." Chapter 2678. Apparently, he was cutting ties with her. Roxy's pupils constricted, and she asked, "You're breaking up with me?" Zephyr looked at her indifferently and said, "Yes. I don't see a future in our relationship. Besides, I'm tired." His mind had been telling him that the woman in front of him was not the real Daisy whenever he saw her. However, he lied to himself and treated her as Daisy. It was just that Roxy would never be Daisy. They were two different people, and there was no way anyone could replace Daisy. "Zeph, why? Did I do something wrong?" Roxy grabbed his hand. "Why are you breaking up with me? Is it because of Leah?" Zephyr's face sank. "This has nothing to do with her." She chuckled. "Are you sure? Zephyr, you started to waver from the moment you found out that Leah had a crush on you, right?" Zephyr's gaze was freezing as he said, "Roxy, don't think too highly of yourself. You don't know anything about me." Roxy clenched her fists and took a deep breath. "Zephyr, I know you've been taking me as someone else, but I've never said anything about it. Do you know how sad I was when I learned that you've been treating me as someone else throughout the months I've been dating you? Did I ever tell you anything about it?" "No." Zephyr did not say anything in return. She laughed and said, "But you're now breaking up with me. And you just gave me $250,000. He was the one who had approached her, and now he was going to cut ties with her after using her. Zephyr frowned. "What? Is it too little? I've been paying for your food, clothes, and luxuries for the past few months. I even bought you a new car. If you add these up, it should be enough for you to pay for a villa. You're still not satisfied?" Roxy chuckled and said, "But all of these are nothing when compared to being the daughter-in-law of the Goslings." Since Roxy had shed away her disguise, Zephyr felt that he did not have to pretend anymore. The disgust in his eyes was apparent as he said, "I've told you before. Don't think too highly of yourself. What if I refuse to leave your side? What are you gonna do about me?" Roxy said as she rubbed his leg with her foot, but Zephyr remained indifferent. Roxy's face sank after Zephyr left. She had been under the impression she could take Zephyr down after spending the last few months with him. Even if she couldn't get his heart, at least she could get his body. However, it now seemed like she had underestimated Zephyr. Apparently, he was being serious when he said he wanted to cut ties with her. Zephyr might be a jerk, but he would never turn his head back when he had decided to break up with his girlfriend. "Ha, no matter how heartless you're, I'll find a way to force you to accept me as your wife." In the car park, an intimate activity was happening inside a car. After everything was over, Roxy lit up a cigarette, and the middle-aged man beside her put his arm around her. "What happened? Who made you upset?" She lifted her eyelids and exhaled. "I want to become an artist." The middle-aged man frowned. "What? Why do you suddenly want to become an artist?" Roxy nestled herself comfortably in his arms and said, "Don't worry. I won't let your wife know about our relationship. I have my own reason for becoming an artist. Isn't the chairman of Tenet Media a relative of yours? You just have to ask, and I'm sure it won't be a problem for me to sign under Tenet Media." The middle-aged man's face sank. "You want to join Tenet Media? Isn't Daisy temporarily retired from the entertainment industry because she's pregnant? I'm sure she won't be able to return to the entertainment industry so soon. Since I look so much like her, I'm sure I'll stand a chance to become famous." Roxy touched her face and continued, "When I become famous, you'll earn money as well. It's a win-win situation, isn't it?" Chapter 2679. Roxy had gotten plastic surgery to look like Daisy. Although she did not look exactly like her, one could see some similarities between them when they observed closely. Since Daisy could become popular, Roxy could become famous as well. The middle-aged man put on his jacket and said, "I can help you with that, but make sure you keep your lips tight." Roxy chuckled. "Don't worry, I will." After a few days, Roxy became an artist under Tenet Media with the middle-aged man's help. When the manager at Tenet Media saw Roxy, he was stunned. This was the first time he saw someone who looked so much like Daisy. Soon, the rumors about someone who looked a lot like Daisy began to spread in the company. When Charlie heard the rumors from his assistant, he harumphed and said, "So what if she looks like her? Do you think anyone can replace Daisy?" Those people must be out of their minds. His assistant knew Charlie very well. Apparently, the company was planning to take advantage of Daisy's fame. Otherwise, they wouldn't have signed a contract with a new artist who looked like her and put her in a girls' group. But there was one thing he couldn't understand. How could their chairman make such a stupid decision? Just when Charlie's assistant was trapped in his own thoughts, Charlie asked, "Who signed her?" "I heard that she's introduced by Mr. Goldwyn." Charlie frowned. "Roland." His assistant nodded. "Our chairman is his brother-in-law. He has a lot of connections in the entertainment industry, so I think that's why our chairman couldn't say no to him." At Taylorton, Nalace was peeling and feeding Daisy oranges while she nestled comfortably in his arms and watched the fog. She was wearing a one-piece evening dress in the series, which accentuated her slim figure greatly. She couldn't help but frown when she compared it to her current body figure. "Nolly, people always say that women may suffer from appearance anxiety after having a baby. If I get fat in the future, will you still love me?" Nalace chuckled and popped a piece of orange into her mouth. "You're rather plumpy right now. Did I ever say anything? It's a different thing." He kissed her forehead and said, "You become fat because you're having a baby for me. So, of course, I'll still love you as always." Daisy looked at him and smiled. Suddenly, she received a call from Hannah. She answered the call. "What's the matter, Hannah?" "Daisy, what is wrong with Tenet Media? How could they sign a new artist who looks like you? Are they going to replace you?" Daisy was stunned for a few moments before replying, "An artist who looks like me? Yeah, my friends at Tenet just told me about it. Not only does that woman look like you, but she dresses like you as well. She looks just like your copy." Daisy did not know what to say. Hannah continued, "Oh yeah, her name is Roxy Van Dam." Daisy was stunned. "Roxy, I heard that someone helped her to join Tenet. I think she's trying to ride on your coattails. Everyone is calling her Daisy Jr. right now. I really want to ask where she had her plastic surgery. Maybe I should go to the same place and make myself look like you as well. This way, I won't have to work so hard anymore," said Hannah. Daisy said, "Are those plastic surgery hospitals using me as their template? Can I say that I'm getting popular, but in a different way now? Anyway, I don't think you should worry too much about it. There's no way a fake like her can replace you. You're the one and only Daisy in the entertainment industry. After your return, I'm sure you can still prove to everyone that you're the best, right?" Daisy chuckled. She knew Hannah was just worried about her, so she said, "Yeah, no one can imitate me. Don't worry about that." After she hung up the call, she fell into contemplation. Chapter 2680. Nalace had heard their conversation and sent a message to Charlie. Other than becoming the leader of a girls' group, Roxy also made her debut on a show with the title, Daisy Jr., and received a lot of attention on the internet. Not only did she look like Daisy, but she also dressed like her. Some of Daisy's fans were disgusted by her, but some of them were amused. #Stop imitating Daisy. Hashtag we won't be so disgusted if she just looks like her, but she obviously is imitating her on purpose. There's no need to feel so offended, guys. If she imitates Daisy, it just means that Daisy is still very popular. At Tenet, Charlie had been pulling his face ever since the meeting started. When their partner wanted Roxy to continue using the title, Daisy Jr., and demanded Charlie to become Roxy's manager, Charlie flipped out and said, "What do you mean by that? Just because Daisy is temporarily retiring from the entertainment industry, you guys want to find another woman who looks like her and take advantage of her fame so that she can perform well in this industry. Not only that, but you want me to become her manager as well." The rest of the people looked at each other awkwardly. Their partner said, "Mr. Johnson, I know that you're Daisy's manager, but Daisy's contract will soon expire, right? She might leave Tenet, and you must also take over a new artist. Besides, we're doing this for the company's sake, and there's nothing wrong with a company supporting its artist. We should consider how much profit she can generate for us." The chairman crossed his fingers together and did not say anything. Charlie sneered. "So, are you saying that we should let her earn money just because she looks like Daisy? She doesn't have any acting experience and is incapable. How is she going to do that, then? Just because she has a pretty face. Their partner frowned. A pretty face is what everyone in the entertainment industry cares about. There is barely an artist who has any acting skills now. They all can become famous because they have a huge fan base. After that, he continued. Besides, Daisy is the best actress right now. Even though she's one of the top actresses in the entertainment industry and started out her career as a child star, she doesn't have a huge fan base. She is just an A-list actress, and a celebrity with a huge fan base is what Tenet needs right now. I don't see anything wrong with us supporting Roxy at all. Charlie sprung up from his chair and said, "Sure, you can go ahead and do what you want. I'll never become her manager." After that, Charlie left the meeting room without any hesitation. They knew Charlie very well, so they could only try to convince the chairman. The chairman said helplessly, "I'm sure you all know Charlie very well. He nearly rejected Daisy back then, so there's no way he'll become Roxy's manager this time. Let's just take a step back and assign another manager for her." Charlie stood in the corridor and took a drag from his cigarette. He was still fuming with anger. Even though he had been in the entertainment industry for a long time and had seen a sort of people, this was the first time he had come across someone who dared to threaten him like this. He was disgusted by. He did not have any problem if Tenet wanted to support Roxy, but he would never become her manager. There was something he would never do in his life. He did not require his artists to be the best, but at least he wanted them to be all-around artists and could produce some works. Unfortunately, in this industry where fame and wealth were the mainstream, no one cared whether an artist had excellent acting skills. Suddenly, he received a call from Nales.